Hello and welcome to Alba Minerals Resources. My name is Amelia and I'll be your coordinator for today's conference. For the duration of the call, you'll be on listen only. However, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions, so you can register your own questions at any time by pressing star 1 on the telephone keypad. If at any point you require assistance, please press star 0 on the telephone keypad and you'll be connected to an operator. I am now handing over to your host, George Frangeskides, to begin today's conference. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Welcome everyone to this first question and answer session from Alba Mineral Resources. I'm George Frangeskides, Executive Chairman of the company. The way we're going to do this, as you might have heard, is to run through some of the questions that you've asked in the past few weeks since we announced this session. Henry from our PR advisors, Yellow Jersey, will be putting the questions to me. I'll answer those, and in the meantime, you've also got an opportunity to ask any further questions, which will be relayed to the moderator, and then we'll select some of those, as many as we can, to answer in the time available. So that's how we plan to proceed. I think before we get into the questions, I just wanted to sort of give a bit of an introduction, I suppose. I mean, hopefully some of you will have seen our announcement today, which confirmed that we're going back into the field in Greenland shortly. That's been a long time planning, as you might expect from a sort of logistical standpoint, and we're now pleased to say that we've completed our planning and we're out in the field shortly, both at Tule Black Sands, which is our high-grade ilmenite project in northwest Greenland, but also at Inglefield Land, which will be the first field season there for us, having picked up the license, the main license earlier this year. So that's the plan, and at Tule Black Sands we're going to be hoping to build on the work we did late last summer, where as soon as we got the license granted, we were out in the field as soon as we could. We were able to do a little bit of work there over a week or so, and you'll have seen the very good results we've had from the test work since that short program. So this year, obviously, we're looking to do a much bigger program, which we'll probably touch on in a bit later. Inglefield Land will be sending a couple of senior geologists out there who know the project quite well, and looking at targeting 5 or 6 key priority areas that we've identified. You'll also probably have seen last week's news about Horse Hill, which we've got a direct 11.765% interest in. Alba's the second largest holder in the Horse Hill Developments Consortium, just behind only UCOG. And as a significant investor in Horse Hill, obviously we're very pleased that we're finally into the start of extended well test operations. So that's a key milestone that we've reached. And we obviously will be looking at the results over the next 150 days or so. And the objectives there are to assess commerciality both at the Portland and the Kimmeridge, and hopefully enable the operator to then apply to convert the existing exploration license into an exploitation or production license. So some key news, I think, has come out in the last week or so. So that puts us in a good position as we move into the rest of the summer. So with that introduction in mind, I'll hand over to Henry to sort of put some of your questions to me.
Thanks, George. Question 1. Have Alba shifted their primary business objectives?
That's an interesting question. I don't believe we have. I think Alba was founded in before my time on the board, but it was founded a number of years ago as an mineral exploration company. The objective was and still is to unearth undervalued assets that have the potential to go into production and obviously develop those assets. So that remains our primary focus. Our focus in terms of projects obviously shifts from time to time. Partly that's just because of seasonality, partly that's because of the level of maturity of the project, what it requires. So we're now into Horse Hill testing. We are now going to our summer field program in Greenland. So it may look perhaps as though focuses shift, but our priority overall is the same, that we look for assets that have that potential to go into production. So there is a theme running through our projects. So if you look at Brockham, it was a production license in a previously producing field, and we hope it will be again soon. Horse Hill was a very prospective license, is a very prospective license in an area that has had historic production. Amitsoq, our graphite project in southern Greenland, was a former producing mine, and when it was producing many, many years ago, but they didn't have such things as electric vehicles and lithium-ion batteries. So, as those of you who know about graphite will know, I mean, that's been a hugely developing market for graphite and for other commodities, of course. So that's why we've targeted that project. Clogau was a formerly producing high-grade gold mine. And we see great potential there, both in the mine and also in the wider exploration ground. Again, we'll touch on that a bit later. And Tule Black Sands, well, this time last year we didn't have this project, but we did a review of Greenland and saw that there was potential there on the coastline. Obviously, we were aware of another operator who's done a lot of work over 3 years or so, proving up their project into a very serious proposition in the mineral sand sector. So, there we, as an example of the same business objectives, looking for assets that are undervalued, or in that case, with a new license that we picked up for next to nothing, where we can maybe make great strides in proving up a resource, and that's certainly what we plan to do next there. So we have to be nimble, and so that's why we moved into that space where we weren't 12 months ago. So hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, next question. Could the board please set out more clearly the milestones, targets, and timescales for each of our projects?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I should really start by saying that with regard to timescales, I mean, it's important to understand that investors shouldn't rely on any forward-looking statements, and obviously circumstances can change. And it is important to say that. And it's also a question of not making us hostage to fortune with timelines in relation to things that are affected by external factors like regulatory permitting processes, which we really, to some extent, have no control over, or at best limited control. But with all that in mind, clearly there are some milestones and targets that we've got. I mean, I've touched on some of them really. Horse Hill, 150 days of testing that has commenced. And we will know, during this process, both hopefully, commerciality, as I said, of both the Portland and the Kimmeridge, and whether we can then move as a consortium to a production license. And the target still from the operator is 2019 production. So that's a milestone, or a target, should I say. Brockham, we're waiting on decision on planning to start production testing from Brockham 4. The beauty of Brockham is that it's a production license, so it's not we're not moving from exploration to production. As soon as we can, we start production testing, and so the profile of that project is really, the timeline is a short one. As soon as hopefully planning is obtained. At Tule, I think I said again, without the risk of repeating myself, but the key objective for this summer is to do enough work to prove up that there is potential for significant tonnage at Tule Black Sands. So the idea is to do enough work there, as I say, to get a mineral resource estimate at some point this year. It's not just a question of collecting the samples, it's then a lot of work that goes into the testing thereafter, and the delineation of a formal JORC resource takes some months, but it's certainly a target for us this year. With Tule, for example, we're looking ahead. So we have to plan ahead and assume that we will get good results, and assume that we will be able to prove up a material size resource, or at least a baseline resource that we can then build on in future seasons. So we're doing environmental baseline studies this summer as well, and that will be work that can support a future environmental impact assessment, and that underpins any application for an exploitation license. So we are obviously thinking ahead to assume, as we must, a successful campaign. Inglefield is an early stage project. I won't sort of try and deny that it's an early stage project, but as an exploration company, we want to have a mix of early stage and more mature projects if we can, and that's what I think we've got now. And there's great potential there. I mean, we know that there's copper, cobalt, nickel, zinc, gold, vanadium. It's replete with potential. So we will be going back in there, as I said, and targeting key areas that we think have the potential for a significant deposit. But time will tell, and it won't be very long before we know what we found there. Amitsoq, we've got a drill-ready project. The next step's to drill to confirm structure and then to drill for a JORC resource. We'll touch on Amitsoq a bit later on. Limerick is one where perhaps people thought maybe we weren't focusing on Limerick, but we are actually decided that we will go in and drill one or two more holes there, and again I'll touch on that a bit later. And Clogau, the key thing at Clogau is twofold. One is to get planning to reopen the mine. To get planning, you need to do various baseline studies and submit various reports and documents. It's a fairly lengthy process. But in the meantime, whilst we look at that, we intend to go back in and target some of the high priority gold workings and anomalies that we're aware of. We're aware of about 300 of them on the Gold Mines of the World license. So we're looking there for extensions to the former mine and also just new deposits. And we think there's good prospects for that. So hopefully that gives a flavour of sort of what we're looking at and some of the milestones that we're trying to hit.
Okay, next question. As recently as February this year, a price target of 6p per share was issued by one broker. Given the recent fundraising, does the company believe that this is a realistic target within the next 12 months? If so, what steps are the company taking to help move the share in this direction?
Okay, thanks, Henry. Well, I think it won't surprise you to say that I won't be able to comment on any targets that brokers set for our share price. But clearly, I mean, I've probably given a sense, but clearly I think we as a board think that the share price will likely depend on, certainly in the short to medium term, on results at Horse Hill, commencing production at Brockham 4 in particular, results of our field work in Greenland, and in particular at Tule Black Sands, because that's going to be the focus for this summer in Greenland. So I think that it's clear that that's going to be not only news flow, which is good, drives interest in our company and what we're doing, but obviously hopefully also positive results in each of those three cases at least, and not forgetting our other projects that we'll still be working on in the background. So clearly, in terms of share price, clearly we would have wanted our price to have been further advanced by this point. And the fact is that Horse Hill and Brockham, which I think has brought a lot of interest to Alba over the last couple of years, have taken longer than everyone would have hoped for. And that is just the nature of the UK environment. It involves a number of different regulatory authorities, and we have to, and we will always abide by those requirements and have to fulfil them. So, as an investor in those projects, we don't drive them. We are an investor like yourselves in Alba. We're an investor in those projects, and we have to grin and bear it essentially as the operator does its best to navigate those waters. But look, we've had a breakthrough at Horse Hill. We're on the ground now doing testing, and we hope for a breakthrough soon at Brockham as well. So I think that that's partly why I suggest we're probably not where we want to be, but we're on the cusp now, as I say, with Horse Hill is driving forward. Brockham we hope soon. Tule Black Sands will be working for the next little while and getting results out of that. So I think that time will tell now. We're in a key phase, I think, in the development of some of our projects.
Does the Alba board consider the current market cap will support expenditure across these projects in 2019-2020? Will the board consider mothballing certain projects if this is not the case?
Well, look, we keep our projects under regular review, and as I said, our focus can change from time to time. That may be just market sentiment, but we try not to be driven by market sentiment. So I'll give you an example where we try to be a little bit nimble. So in Limerick, in Ireland, base metals project, We had a review conducted this year by a new consultant, external consultant, who knows the ground and the region very, very well. We identified through that review a number of undrilled targets on our ground. This area has actually come back into life quite a lot of late. I mean, there are a number of operators who are very busy in the region. We're surrounded by people with licenses. We're a little enclave amongst a couple of groups who've taken quite a lot of ground. We could also spend a modest amount of money to drill 1 or 2 holes there and keep the license in good standing for a couple of years. I say modest, I'm talking about 50,000 euros, that sort of spend. And we decided that would be a good idea and that we would do that. And then we'll take it from there once we've done that and gone back into the ground, take 1 or 2 drill holes and see from there where the project takes us. Had the spend requirement been a lot higher, our answer probably would have been very different. So it's just an example where we might have a number of projects in our portfolio, but their profiles are quite different. I'm not saying that in the future Limerick won't justify a greater expenditure, but I'm just saying for the moment we can keep it in good standing with a fairly modest amount of spend. Now other projects obviously have a different profile. So in terms of expenditure, clearly from what I've said, I guess you probably imagine that our expenditure is currently falling disproportionately on 2 main projects. One is Horse Hill. And in order to maintain our interest there, which is the second largest shareholder in the consortium after UCOG, we've fully funded our share of 150 days of extended well test operations, and that does not come cheap. So that's one area that we've decided that we should fully fund, and we should follow our investment in full. Tule Black Sands is the other project in which we have concentrated some of our expenditure, and the decision there, if you just want to compare and contrast, Tule Black Sands is a beach sand deposit. It's not a hard rock deposit, and we can therefore and should be able to push it much more quickly forward over a field campaign, and for less money than we could the equivalent hard rock deposit. So, for instance, it would cost a lot more money to drill Amitsoq to a resource status than it should to drill Tule Black Sands to a resource status. At least that's the profile. That's the difference in profile. So that's why we decided to focus on, one of the reasons we decided to focus on Tule Black Sands, because we think we can potentially get better results for shareholders for, relatively speaking, less money. The risk-reward profile is positive and it's worth prioritising, but we're going to see how that pans out. I mean, that's all results dependent, as ever. And it doesn't mean equally that we won't want to drill Amitsoq at some point in the future and get a resource there also. Whether we did that on our own or in conjunction with others, we'll talk about those sorts of things a bit later. But just to finalise I think the question was in 2 parts. And will the board consider mothballing certain projects in the future? And obviously we will always keep our projects under review, and certainly following this summer field season, once the test work results are in, we'll evaluate where we are on all our assets. We'll look at prioritising again. We may look to reduce our licence areas if the results were not as we expected them to be or hoped to be, and thereby reduce our commitments. We can look, and we do think about joint venturing and farming out projects. So especially where we don't have the resources in terms of people and money to take them forward by ourselves. So it's the driver for all of these things is unlocking value for shareholders. So in our existing assets, and that doesn't mean that we have to always look to take every single asset forward as 100% owner to production. So we have to think about each asset's profile. That changes over time, and that is something that we keep under review. And as I said, we'll definitely be reviewing that after this next field season. Henry.
Are Alba looking to get a resource on Greenland? What are we aiming for with regard to Tule?
Yeah, I think I've probably covered that. But I'm interested to see a lot of questions about our plans at Tule Black Sands. So it's good to see that is attracting a lot of interest. As I said, we've released a press release today confirming we're starting work there soon. We intend to take a lot more samples than we did last year because we just didn't have time in a short field campaign just after we got the license. We've got a couple of small mobile drill rigs on site this year. So that should enable us to cover more ground and hopefully take some deeper samples. We're doing environmental baseline studies. And so we're looking ahead and planning for a successful outcome in this field season. Yeah.
Okay. Can the board summarise the plans for Amitsoq going forward?
Okay. So I think I said that we've done a lot of work on Amitsoq. We've got it to a drill-ready status essentially. So the last work we did last field season was to do a lot of structural geology. We had a structural geologist going out to site and helping us to sort of understand the structure a bit better. From that, we've determined certain drill targets. So the next step is to drill it for structure and then ultimately to drill it for a maiden resource. Whether we can do that this season is going to depend on a number of factors. Drill rig availability of personnel. We've got people tied up in northwest Greenland. So I'd say a decision hasn't yet been made on that, but there's still a window towards the end of this season as regards Amitsoq.
Why did Alba do two fundraisings so close together earlier in the year and not one larger one?
Okay, we've had also a few questions on our fundraising, so there's a few points probably worth making here. Firstly, as I've probably pointed out in a roundabout way, the funding requirements that we've had this year are quite lumpy in the sense that expenditure requirements at two of our key assets, Hortel and Tule, have kicked in at pretty much the same time. Testing at Hortel last week started and operations have started anyway last week, and fieldwork is commencing shortly in Greenland. So we've had to make sure we have funds in place to meet those key commitments. And secondly, fundraising is not always, unfortunately, done in a perfect world. And when we raised money in March, market conditions were what they were, and we raised what we did. But we probably would have liked to have had a bit more money in the tin in March. And then circumstances change also, and that's something that there's no reason why investors would know these things, but they do. They just change, and it became necessary for us at Hortel to demonstrate that we had full funding in place for the entire 150-day testing program, and we've confirmed that in our recent press releases. So circumstances, as I say, also change, and we have to react to those circumstances. So because of that, we went back into the market in May to raise further funds to ensure we had sufficient coverage for those key programs. So look, I mean, we obviously would like to be raising money at higher levels. I've mentioned why I think it hasn't been possible of late because of delays in timelines relating to the oil investments. But the bottom line is that we think we have to have the funds in place to execute our key work programs, because that's really what is going to give shareholders the best chance of seeing an uplift in our share price, doing good work, getting good results on our key projects. So that was really the bottom line. We had to make sure that those programs were fully funded, and that's what we went and did. I hope that answers the question.
Okay. The December 2017 RNS said that production testing program would focus on the Portland, KL3 and KL4 reservoirs, whereas last week's RNS said that testing would now test Portland, KL3 and KL4 oil pools. Can you explain the change to the testing, please?
Okay, I think this is a specific question around the use of the word reservoirs versus oil pools. And I think I think that's right. The reader or the questioner is correct. We've used reservoirs in one RNS, I think, and oil pools in another. They both relate to accumulations of petroleum, so they're both very similar. But I've asked our technical director for odds because this is beyond my pay grade, and he tells me that reservoirs is probably the better term. So there you go. Well done to whoever posed that question and picked that up. But in essence, there's no, as I understand it, there's no significant intended, certainly, in the change of that wording. But thanks for picking that up.
With regard to wholesale, please can you clarify and confirm what will happen to any oil revenues that are generated from extended well testing?
Okay, that's quite simple. Revenues from the testing program will be used to offset the overall cost of the program for all the partners, including Alba.
Okay. Alba recently hired an oil and gas consultant. Is it possible to explain the primary need for a consultant at this juncture, given the Horshill and Brockham acquisitions were presumably made without outside consultancy?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, look, as I said, we're the second largest partner in the Horshill Developments Limited Consortium. We've increased our stake over the last few years from 5% initially to 18.1% in the operator. As such, also as a significant part of our portfolio, it made sense to the board that we bring on some expertise as we move into this key phase of work, both at Horshill and also we hope at Brockham. Why do we need that? I mean, we could probably have managed without it, but it's good to have our own internal resource. It enables us to evaluate the key data that comes out of the test work, hopefully at both sites, decide for ourselves what it means. Of course, we'll also take the advice of the operators in both cases and their teams. And that information will all then inform our decision as to how we view the projects, whether we want to continue funding them at the same levels as today or otherwise. So, I see bringing in people of the pedigree and background of Feroz Sultan and Sue Corrigan. Feroz has run his own projects in the past, been an executive director on listed oil and gas plays in the past. Sue has worked as a senior geologist at Tullow Oil previously. I see those appointments as a real positive for us. And I should also say, if it helps, that they are part-time consultants for Alba, so we are always very conscious about headcount and overhead.
Can you confirm when Surrey County Council will be considering the normalisation application for Brockham?
I can't. We're awaiting confirmation on that from the operator.
Okay. Do you hope to reopen the Clogau mine in Wales? And if so, what prospects are there? How much funding would be required? And how long before putting it back into production?
Well, I'm going to probably disappoint the question a little bit, because in terms of timelines and things, I think it's going to make us hostage to fortune there, because it is, in terms of production, it's a planning application that needs to go in and then be heard and evaluated, and we hope to be successful. Now, timelines for that are slightly open, shall we say. But in terms of trying to manage the process, I mean, certainly one thing I would say is that what we're looking to design at Clogau is a low impact scheme. So low visual impact, low environmental impact, low community impact, and that we think will have the best chances of success at Clogau. And then at the same time, as I said, the interest and I think the excitement in the project can come also in the meantime by us going out into the exploration license and looking for some of these looking at some of these gold workings that we know exist historically that could turn out to be another Clogau. So that's the plan there.
Okay, final question before we pass the listeners back to the operator for a short period. Can we expect more PR to get Alba more interest?
Okay, well, I should probably get you, Henry, to answer that question, but I'll save you from that. Look, I mean, I think we have done quite a lot of PR, if that's the right word. I've done video interviews on Proactive, we've done podcasts on various platforms in the last year or so. Alba is at the conferences, we're at Mines and Money, we're at the UK Investor Show, had our own stand there. We've been featured in publications with the help of Yellow Jersey in places like Mining Journal, Telegraph, other newspapers, other national newspapers. We're doing this Q&A session, which I hope will prove useful. We're happy to do it again if people think it's of use. And the other thing we're going to do is host a shareholder evening in London in late July. So that's an opportunity for shareholders of Alba to come and listen to our presentation, meet all the Alba team, not just have to hear from myself rabbiting on. but meet some of our other team members in a slightly more personal setting, and we hope that will be well received and well attended, and we'll be putting out announcements about that quite soon.
Okay, we will now pass you back to the operator, and we will respond to your questions shortly.
Okay. If you would like to ask a question, please press star 1 on your telephone keypad. If you change your mind and you wish to withdraw your question, please press star 2. Okay, we open up the lines now to read the questions from participants. Please go ahead.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for the additional questions. There were a couple of questions about fundraisings in terms of our timing of our recent fundraisings, which I believe I did cover, but thank you again for those. I hope I did answer those questions as to why I went back into the market in May. Other than that, there was a question about production license in Greenland. I presume, well, it depends on which Greenland asset I guess we're talking about. Clearly there's a well mapped out program for getting from exploration into development and into production. There are key milestones that need to be reached. One of those is obviously an environmental impact assessment, feasibility study, and various other studies that need to be done on every project, and that's pretty common to most and all mining jurisdictions. So, look, let's just wait to see how we go at Thule this summer, and we'll be able to say a little bit more thereafter about our timeline to take the project forward. Amitsoq, the same, I would say, there, and we'll, as soon as we can, we'll give further information, I think, on likely or possible timescales. I don't think I'd sort of want to go be too definitive at this stage. I think let's get through this work program, and then we'll certainly try to map out a plan and obviously circulate a plan for a timeline at Thule and Amitsoq and our other projects. It's very good feedback that we've had. So clearly, there's been quite a few questions about timelines and timescales, and we take that on board. And we will try to address those moving forward. In terms of the question about how we think our market cap will react to, if you like, the hitting of key milestones, it's very hard to say. So a bit like share price movement, it's very hard to say. Clearly, what we're trying to do is to add value to these projects. That is all going to be results dependent. And if the results go well at Hortel and at Thule and our other projects, then we should expect to see share price and therefore market capitalization appreciation. But that is all results dependent. We think we've got good projects that are prospective and have real potential. We are doing, we think, the right things on those projects. We will see how that works out in the next little while. The good thing is we are working and we're out in the field. There will be results. There will be news flow. It's going to be an exciting 3 to 6 months. The rest of this year is going to be busy. There's going to be a lot of news and a lot of information coming out of what we're doing. So, we're not resting on our laurels, and we will be updating you as we go along. So that's I think that was the main one that came out of the questions. Hopefully, I haven't missed anything in particular. But look, thanks very much indeed for everybody who's joined the call. I hope it's been interesting, useful. If you've got any feedback, please give it to Yellow Jersey. And we'll take that on board for the next one that we do. I mentioned the shareholder evening that we'll be running. I mean, I've met a number of investors at our previous conferences that we've attended, which has been great to get that input and feedback and meet people face to face. So we're going to do that in a bit more of a personal setting, late July, and please look out for the announcement of that shortly. Thanks again, and hope to see some of you soon.
Thank you for joining today's call. You may now disconnect your handsets.